Hey there guys, Jordan in the know here, and what I have here is the OnePlus One, and at this point it's been a solid 6 months since its initial release, so the purpose of this video is to find out how it's been doing, and at this point it's pretty good because this is right before OnePlus is starting to issue its pre-order system, so this is a good time to see if it's even worth your time. So, let's get into it. So let me just say that this is officially my favorite phone, and if you needed someone to tell you to buy it, just buy it, because this is a really good phone and you can't really go wrong here. But let's go into details about it. Now, even though OnePlus has done some questionable things as a company, in the recent months, one thing is for certain is that they know how to make an awesome phone. Starting with the build, it's pretty solid. Even though there are virtually no metal anywhere on the phone, it has a distinctive complexion that makes it feel compact and sturdy. The most frustrating part about the quality of the One is the fact that the band around the phone is a chromium plastic, and I absolutely hate that on any device. I hate it on the Galaxy S3, I hated it on the S4, I hated it on the Note 3, and I will hate it forevermore. And I don't really understand why a company would feel proud in doing that. I mean, I know it's more flexible and somewhat cheaper, but chromium plastic simply doesn't play nicely with drops. Back on track though, the build is otherwise pretty great. The back has a plush, velvety feeling that's pretty much exclusive to the One, and not a single person has held this phone without paying specific attention to it. It feels great and will sew somewhere over time, but luckily the back is removable. And just to touch on removable back for a second, you should probably never ever do it. It's probably the most annoying part of this phone. And unless you're switching back plates, just don't even bother. As for the rest of the phone, the screen protrudes from the frame of the phone, which basically makes the screen more susceptible to drops. Thankfully, I haven't dropped mine yet, because if you repair phones as a hobby like I do, or you're looking to get yours repaired, the display prices are maxing out at $130, which is almost half the price of the phone, so you may want to save up some money and get a new one anyways. The feeling of this phone is something impressive too. The One has practically the same dimensions as the Note 3 in regards of width, height, and thickness, but OnePlus makes the design taper off at the edges to make it feel super thin. On the bottom is a micro USB port that is reversed to almost all Android phones, and the speakers, which are surprisingly louder than the Htc One M8, not even kidding, but just don't sound as good. Now, the phone is indeed a big phone, and every person that's held it has pointed that out too, but coming from a Note 3, it felt just fine, and my fingers could wrap around the entire display, and one-handed use was perfect. While I do like the look of the phone, I feel the bezels could have been a little bit thinner, but up front, you're going to have a 5.5-inch LCD display, and those dimly lit capacitive buttons. And even though OnePlus has pushed a few updates to make them brighter, you can see they're still pretty dim. But on closer inspection, those capacitive buttons have a few more features than what I originally thought. Turns out you can map those keys to do specific functions, like short press the home button to unlock the phone, or long pressing the button to put the display to sleep. OnePlus also pushed out an update to allow the proximity sensor to detect when your phone is in your pocket. That way the on-screen gestures don't get randomly triggered. I will say that one thing that's really annoying about the One is that it will aimlessly start playing music in my pocket, which isn't really good because the volume would always be up and that would always result in blasting music in places where music shouldn't be. So I found in the settings that it's an off-screen gesture, but it seemed more sensitive than any other gesture, so I ended up just turning it off anyway. But that's just one example of the large variety of features the One has. There's also a theme store which will allow you to search for themes for your phone that can change the entire visual appearance of pretty much everything. Then there's the ability to completely reorganize your entire home screen according to grid size, icon labels, and scroll effects, and you also have the option to create specific profiles that will only have access to specific apps. You can switch between on and off-screen buttons, and there's a built-in equalizer for anyone that knows about that. You can use it to mess around with the bass, mids, and highs to get the perfect song that suits you. And something that I would consider a feature is consistent updates. I've had more updates in the few months using this OnePlus One than I have on all of my Android phones combined. And that's something I really appreciate about this phone. Each update usually improves the phone concerning battery and a few features, but that's one reason I love this phone so much. But speaking about appreciation though, the Gallery app is simply amazing. It's fast, fluid, and easy to use, and there are just some subtle things that I enjoy, like how the photos pixelate when loading and little things like that. And from there, the list goes on and on. Now, one thing I want to point out is how the software performs. Now, in benchmarks, the OnePlus One pretty much trumps any other phone out there. But what's really important is day-to-day use. And let me just say the performance has been absolutely fantastic. The entire phone performs agile and quick, and the Snapdragon 801 and 3 gigs of RAM really does a great job here. Apps open quickly, and moving throughout the OS results in a clean, lag-free experience. This phone is pretty solid. Everything is up to par except for the YouTube app, which for some reason there's a super long delay when opening the YouTube app, and it's very apparent here, and I'm not quite sure why it does that. But that's the only flaw that I've come across. And the last thing is the battery and the camera. This subject is pretty strange to talk about because when I initially got the One, the battery would last me an easy 2 days on moderate use. But after a few updates, it's gone from a day and a half to a solid day, and now after this update, I'm getting back up to a day and a half, pushing on 2 days. And back to the camera, the photos are okay. The 13 megapixel sensor takes decent photos. They come out crisp and sharp as long as you're provided with a lot of sunlight. But just a warning, they aren't very croppable, and slow motion video only records at 60 frames per second, so you're not going to get anything good as the Note 3 or the iPhone 6. But anyways guys, that's been my 6 month later review on the OnePlus One, and I know at this point a lot of people are going to be asking whether they should go for the Nexus 6 or the OnePlus One, and at this point I'd probably go with the OnePlus One. CyanogenMod has proven to be an almost superior alternative to stock Android, and besides that, the affordable price of the OnePlus One really does sort of beat the Nexus 6. The differences in specs are pretty minimal, and the differences in price is on a pretty huge margin. So yeah, I think a lot of people were disappointed with the Nexus 6, how it has a really large display and a large price to match, because we're all used to Nexuses being affordable. But anyways guys, that's been my 6 month later review. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one.